thought you were going to put the hockey game on or something. We won't tell. Good evening. I'd like to call our regular council meeting to order at 6 p.m. Happy summer to everyone, and thank you for attending this evening, colleagues on council. Good evening to members of staff and to members of the public in attendance. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are holding our meeting this evening in the territory of the Wasanich people. Today it is the Tsayot Nation, the Sartlip Nation, the Pakwachin Nation, the Sakem Nation, and the Malahat Nation. In turning to approval of the agenda, we have 3 items of correspondence since the agenda was published last Thursday. I want to acknowledge Vanessa Pettinger, who has submitted a letter of correspondence regarding the HandyDART service, and Lee York, who has also submitted an item of correspondence. We thank those individuals for their correspondence. That'll be will fall under item 12A on the agenda this evening. And we have demographics, population estimates from the Capital Regional District as of July 1st. Each year, this was something I thought might be helpful to council with regards to the, as just one piece of information for the item that we have under 13A this evening. And so with those additions, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Councillor Duck.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Garnett. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor. That motion carries. Thank you. And we're next turning to our regular public participation period, where we provide an opportunity for members of the public to come forward to address council. You have a maximum of 4 minutes, and we ask that you identify yourself, provide your name and the municipality that you reside in, and I'll call for a first time and welcome anyone wishing to speak this evening. Please come forward. There is just a button at the bottom of the microphone. There's just a button at the bottom of the mic.
The mic is, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Pettinger. I've lived on the peninsula my whole life, gone to this school district and everything. And almost 8 years ago, I lost my sight 100%. I was a passenger in a car accident. And I have a 12 and a 14-year-old that go to the schools out here. And with having caregivers and things like that, they are not liable to be able to take my kids in my car, or in their car. And I have been wholeheartedly reliant on HandyDART. I started using it 7 years ago. It's been my lifesaver to get me to my medical appointments, my kids to be able to have a normal life like other kids and get to appointments. And in these past few months, I haven't been able to get to any of my appointments. I used to be a scheduler before I lost my sight. So a lot of people complain that having to book 14 days in advance is unreasonable, but I wake up every single morning and say, what's on my schedule in 14 days? And I'm diligent about booking it, one of the first calls I make. And now booking 14 days in advance. I called this morning to go to my physio and my kinesiologist at Tall Tree at Cordova Bay Maddox Farm. I've been going for 7 years, and these past 8 weeks, they've not been able to get me there at all. I've missed so many appointments. Other appointments, I've shown up late, although they've guaranteed me a ride, or they say you're on standby and you can find out that morning. It's unacceptable. It's not fair to my kids. I've had to pull my kids out of, well, my son out of one of his programs at Panorama because we haven't been able to get there. And it's really sad. It's really heartbreaking. And I've heard numerous stories across the peninsula And I think about it as there's probably a good 40 to 60% of people that use HandyDART that can't get online, can't go to meetings, can't speak up for themselves. So I'm going to be the voice for all of them. And I'm asking you guys, please, there's problems here, Port Alberni, Cowichan with HandyDART, and I need help because we need to be able to live a normal life, be included in society, not be isolated. And my kids want to have a normal life too. So if I can't get somewhere with 14 days in advance, it's crushing. I'm already isolated. I can't do things, and I need your help. I need everybody's help, not just for me, but for a lot of people in the community. We're getting rid of cars and going to bikes, but we still want to be out there and do things. So I'm just asking you all if you could support me. I've reached out to BC Transit and a lot of people, and if I can just get everybody on board, hopefully we can find some changes. They just built an $83 million new facility out in View Royal, and they're saying that it has no effect on our service, but it has, because for 7 years I've never had an issue like that until these past few weeks. From what I've been told, that they have about enough 20 to 25 spaces in the offices for schedulers, and they only have 2 people working at a time. I know some of the bus drivers are frustrated because their schedules have changed and they're not getting paid overtime anymore because they can't afford it. So I don't know where lines got misconstrued, but we're suffering the consequences, and I feel really bad for the schedulers and drivers who have to face it head on, and BC Transit aren't coming to the table and giving any answers. So if I could ask for your support, that'd be great.
Thank you, Ms. Pettinger. Thank you for taking the time to come and speak this evening, and for your letter of correspondence, and also for participating on the Sandwich Peninsula Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Yeah, thank you.
And we appreciate the recommendations that the committee has made to council that we'll be speaking to later this evening. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening.
You're welcome. I'll call for a second time if there's anyone else wishing to speak this evening. And seeing no further speakers, I'll close our public participation period. We don't have any presentations this evening. We're next moving to bylaws, and under 5A we have bylaw number 2290, which is amendment number 1 to our zoning bylaw to allow up to 4 dwelling units on property within the multi-use residential group of zones with lot areas less than 750 square meters. We have considered this at a prior meeting and given readings to this bylaw, and I would look for someone to move the staff recommendation, please. Councillor Duck.
Yes, I'll move the recommendation that with approval received from the Ministry of Housing, June 3rd, 2025, the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And next we're turning to item 5B, which is bylaw number 2293, which is amendment number 2 to our zoning bylaw to support the disaster water supply project by allowing shipping containers in parks. We have a report from Ms. Verhagen and Chief Mickelson, and I'll turn to staff for an introduction, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. To execute our disaster water supply project, staff are seeking an amendment to the zoning bylaw to allow shipping containers in parks. The proposed amendment permits a maximum of 2 containers per property. A high level of oversight in respect to the rationale if a container is appropriate in a park will be maintained, as all lands designated as park in the official community plan are owned either by the province or the town. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. I'll begin with Councillor Garnett, then go to Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff. I first want to congratulate Chief Mickelson and staff for your successful grant funding, $176,000. It made a great story in the paper highlighting Sydney, and just your ongoing work with resilience in terms of what would happen if there was something that went sideways in our community, and how you're always thinking outwardly and having great forethought what needs to happen. Just a couple of, in the report it mentions a couple of institutional lands that have sort of been included as a potential, and I'm wondering if you could speak to which 2 those are.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Garnett, we've identified a total of 3 sites. The one mentioned in the report, which is the one on basically broken Sydney down into 3 quadrants. two community points of distribution will be on the east side of the highway. Pardon me, one in the north end and one in the south end. The north end will be Rathdown Park as depicted in the staff report. The other one is being targeted for very close to the CSB, adjacent to the Mary Winspear lot. And then there'll be one located on the west side of the highway, very close to the Eastleigh and Sharples intersection.
Okay, great, thank you. That's answers two questions in one. With regards to Rathdown Park, like you speak to being accessible for the site. I'm wondering, you must in your mind envision where in particular in the park would work best.
Yes, once again, through the mayor to Councillor Garnett, that's correct. It would be in the basically right at the intersection of Calvin and Bowerbank. So right in the I guess the southwest corner. And that provides the best accessibility from a gate perspective, as well as accessibility off those two thoroughfares for people converging to get disaster water.
Perfect. And one last question, if I may. With regards to the screening, what do you, like, not so much for the institutional grounds, but for in terms of being in a park, what would you envision that would fit within a park for screening?
Well, that's an excellent question, and we had initial conversations with Ms. Clary in respect to that part of the park is going through, there's a playground kind of visioning exercise there, and we would just work with however that best fit in with that exercise that's currently being developed.
Great, thank you very much, and thank you for all your work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Turn to Councillor Duncan and Councillor Duck.
Yeah, thank you. The screening was my question. I guess further to that, it doesn't sound like there's existing guidelines then, and that was something staff was going to come up with. But I'm also just wondering about the container itself, if it's going to be a permanent feature, if as part of the communication outreach, staff was going to discuss this more or wait until after we started to get feedback about, you know, whether it be painted with maybe a mural or something so it kind of fits into the park context better. I guess that would just be, I guess it would be the timing on when we'd actually start discussing those aspects is what I'm going to ask about.
So through the mayor to Councillor Duncan, those are excellent questions. Is as part of this project is being funded by two grants, one being BC Communities, pardon me, the other being the Disaster Resilience and Innovation Fund, and part of that is a fairly detailed series of work packages that we have to comply with in respect to communication schedule. So we actually had a meeting today with our manager of communications, and we're just getting into that functionality now, where we'll be communicating to a number of our stakeholders that are the other municipalities, as well as the CRD and First Nations, and then reaching out to the community in general in respect into this project. So that is going to be taking place over the next 30 to 45 days in our schedule.
Okay, and I guess the last question would be regarding security. Is there, I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be really exciting to try and break in or trash in people. Sometimes it's just really attractive to have something in a park. Is that something you've thought of?
That is a possibility. It will be a locked sea can, and obviously we'll invest in a fairly robust lock. You know, the contents will not be terribly exciting, a large water bladder and, you know, manifolds and a few things like that for water distribution. So probably not on the high list of things to thieve in a park. So. Okay,
that sounds good. It's not attractive. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck.
Asked and answered. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to hear that there'll be maybe some consideration in regards to how they might be beautified or screened or something like that. I like the idea of murals or something. So that's great to hear. I'm just wondering, is there any opportunity for other uses for those containers, or is it something that would be like chock full of, you know, equipment and water, you know? So I'm just looking, are there any efficiencies like that parks people could have equipment or things in there?
It's a good question, and through the mayor, Councillor O'Keefe, thank you. We've intentionally tried to minimize the size of the containers, just to minimize the footprint in the respective locations. So we're targeting containers that are approximately 8 by 10 feet. And that's just to have the volume to contain the requirements of the sea pod. So that has kind of been our thinking, not to have a large, like a 40-foot sea can would be much, would really detract from particularly a park. So that's why we've really focused on just having one just large enough for the contents of the distribution kit.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And just one more. In regards to, would there be signage identifying what these are? I can just see the community saying, what are these things that have suddenly appeared?
We will be having quite a robust communications plan. Like I said, we had a meeting today. There'll be in-town talk, online, and a whole number of other things, as well as it's a requirement of the drift funding that a small portion, the same with our water delivery truck, is going to have a little funded by the province of BC. That's one of the requirements. Or partially funded by the province. So yes, we will make sure that it fits in with the park, and we'll do our best to make sure everyone knows what it is.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Keefe. I'll turn to Councillor Duck.
Yes, if I may, through you, Mayor, to the staff, will these locations, the sea cans at this location be permanently attached to the ground or on a concrete pad of any nature? I'm just thinking relative to earthquake protection and possible vandalism, et cetera.
It's our intent that these would probably be sited on pavers. I don't believe we have any intent on, pouring a foundation, but they would just be sited on pavers, and I'm not too concerned about any kind of seismic events or the like. If a sea can that large is, below the surface, we have much larger problems. So I think we're safe there.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. I have just one question, and that is, are there examples in other municipalities on the South Island or elsewhere on Vancouver Island that have implemented something similar to date?
Through the Mayor, there is examples in place. The CRD has water distribution kits that they provide basically as demonstration kits for participating or other municipalities. But we will be the first that will be able to supply disaster water to their entire populace. So that is 54,000 liters a day. So through the 3 sites, that's 18,000 liters per site in a 24-hour period, which equates to 4 liters a day for 13,500 people. So I've done that math once or twice. So nevertheless, so that's the math we're working backwards from. And have done all the shuttle times with the truck and filling the hydrant. So that's what we're working to proof of concept. And I think a lot of what makes us being able to be the first is obviously our adjacency to a hardened hydrant, but also the fact that we're such a dense and compact urban community. Our ability to deliver water within 5 square kilometers really puts us in an advantage to be able to kind of the first to do this.
Oh, thank you, and it's great to hear that we're blazing a path, as it were, and leading the way. Is there an opportunity going forward? I guess this might be a question of the CRD as well, of having a hardened hydrant more central in Sydney?
That is probably not the case. So the hardened hydrant that we have closest is at the Willingdon Road roundabout, and then there's one just closer on the access road as you go up to Panorama, and they are fed by the reservoir that's up on top of Dean Park. So that reservoir has a seismic valve, and then basically there's 14 hardened hydrants in the CRD, and I believe, and I would defer to my engineer colleague here, but basically it's the proximity and the ability to locate hardened infrastructure to a static site is what determines the location.
That's great. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, we can move forward with 3 motions, one for first, one for second reading, and then a motion to advertise for a public hearing. If someone could start the way. Councillor Dutt?
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation that the bylaw be given first reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? That carries. Thank you.
I'd like to move for second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Dutt?
Only that obviously this is a change to the bylaw, and putting shipping containers anywhere in our community is always a sensitive topic. I think it's a very positive communication can come out of this, as Chief Mickelson has indicated, about being the first community to do this, as well as just indicating the nature of these shipping containers, and to be clear to the community that this, the reason for these and the reason for the change for the bylaw. I think it's important to make sure that communication gets out.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? That carries unanimous. And a final motion, Councillor Duck.
I'll move third reading.
Actually, if you could,
Or-
the motion would be that
Yep.
Staff advertise
Yep.
for public hearing?
The staff advertised for public hearing regarding this bylaw change.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you again to staff. We really look forward to this coming to our community. We're now moving to item 6, and under 6A we have Development Variance Permit Application Number DV 100374 at 9990 4th Street to increase the maximum fence height from 1.8 to 2.15 meters along a rear lot line. We have discussed this at a previous meeting. We've sent notice to neighboring residents, and we've had no written submissions received. And look for someone to move the recommendation. Councillor Dutt,
I move that the application be approved.
seconded by Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. And returning to adoption of minutes under 7A, we have the minutes from our regular council meeting of May 26. Motion to approve, please. Moved by Councillor Keefe.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Garnett. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we're turning to the Mayor's report. I have 2 items this evening. The first is the CRD Board highlights from our May 14th board meetings. Within these, while I think there's lots of great information, in particular, there is the annual report for both the CRD and the annual report for the Housing Corporation. I've always advocated that for those taking an interest in the services provided by the CRD, or more particular by the CRD Housing, the annual report is a great starting place to see the breadth and depth of the services being provided. Those are, of course, linked within the CRD Board highlights when you're viewing this online. But I have nothing particular to Sydney to highlight further, and we don't require a motion to receive. So I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions or comments. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one question. I did read the annual report, and I was noting something drove my attention on. It was on page 24, and it spoke to the CRD Board approved a bylaw increasing the borrowing authority for the Land Assembly, Housing and Land Banking Service to $85 million after receiving director approval through the AAP, the Alternative Approval Process. So I was just sort of curious, you may or may not be able to answer this, but I'm just wondering, is there any likelihood that any of that kind of funding might find its way into Sydney?
Thank you for the excellent question. And so some will be familiar with the Housing First program that the CRD started in about 2018, I think it was, and it carried through until the last year or so. And it was putting $30 million from the federal government, $30 million from the provincial government, and $30 million from the CRD to move housing projects with below market rents throughout the region. Through that initiative, 6 or 7 municipalities did have projects in their municipality. While we had 1 or 2 applications from Sydney, they did not get past the screening and approval stage. And so the board gave direction, I think just before the end of the last term, for staff to bring forward version 2.0, if you will. And based on the significant housing funding programs from both the federal government and the provincial government, a repeat of that previous funding formula wasn't going to go forward. And so the CRD board brought it forward to create this new $85 million fund. However, while it was established as a service bylaw to have the authority to borrow up to $85 million for land banking or to contribute to housing projects that would have below market rents, any particular borrowing, which could be a small amount, it could be several millions or what have you, would have to come back with the particular project identified for board approval. So it's just not that it's there to go ahead and spend. It's there to have in the event that an opportunity comes forward in any of the municipalities to move a housing project. To answer your question more specifically, There isn't, it isn't a program like Housing First where there was an intake process for applications. And so there's a possibility that a project, might be identified in Sydney at some point in the future, but there's nothing in the works with that particular fund at the moment. It is, there's just approval to use those funds. Thank you again for the question. Seeing no further discussion, I'll go on to the second item under 10B, and that is there's two recommendations, and I'll move the first recommendation and then ask for a seconder and motivate at the time there's a seconder, and that is that the regular scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting on August 11th, 2025 be cancelled.
Second.
I have it seconded by Councillor O'Toole. Thank you. And so, Council, the community, previous councils and our council have experience with a lower meeting schedule or a less frequent meeting schedule in the summer months. At one time, and I don't remember the specific number of years, but it could be 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, council had one council meeting in July and one council meeting in August. And it was towards the beginning of last term that council, based on some experience with business that came forward, amended the council procedure bylaw for a committee, and additionally for a Committee of the Whole meeting to precede that council meeting in July and again precede the council meeting in August. We've had some experience over the last few years when sometimes there's very little. We've had some cancellation of Committee of the Whole meetings in the summer. So that's one aspect to it is the need for those two Committee of the Whole meetings, given our past experience. The other is that it's something that I've been considering for a year or two, as I've seen the CRD consider it and other municipalities consider it. We do have a lot of meetings. We have regularly 4 meetings a year. We also participate on a number of other committee meetings and liaison to external organizations. And I felt that we're aware that August as a month, in particular the last couple of weeks in August, are the number one vacation time in our community in general, whether it's for general residents, whether it's for staff, or whether it's for council members or others, even developers to some degree. So we felt that by canceling this particular meeting this year without altering the schedule of the other 3 meetings, that is the 2 in July and the 1 in August, it would give council, and I'm not certain of it, but I know it's at least 4 weeks. I'm not sure if it's closer to 5 weeks or 4.5 weeks of a break during the summertime, which I think is a worthwhile thing to pursue. Any discussion? Councillor Garnett.
I guess my first response when I read it is that we don't normally need a council resolution to cancel, and I think I even looked it up. 32D gives the power for the mayor and the CEO to cancel a meeting at their discretion. So I guess I'm not sure if you can cancel a meeting and it's 9 weeks away, and we just had a meeting in June 2nd that was canceled, why we wouldn't just follow that normal protocol as opposed to having a motion for this specific meeting.
Thank you for the question. I'll turn it to Ms. Nelson, please.
Yes, thank you. I think the intent here was to show notice in advance, so we can now say that, okay, we can't plan for a Committee of the Whole meeting on that Monday. So it's a definite, we can move things around.
It's also general communication. Typically, we don't cancel a meeting until it's much closer to the meeting, because we don't know. I mean, we know council agendas come out on a Thursday. We may not know to the Monday or Tuesday of that week that in fact there isn't enough business to come forward, and that's typically the case with Committee of the Whole meetings. But you have the floor.
Yeah, I guess my only concern would be that's 9 weeks away from tonight, and is there 100% certainty that something won't come up? And if it's not scheduled, then we'd have to schedule a special meeting, and if the community may not hear that ahead of time, as opposed to knowing the meeting's going to be there, and then if we cancel it, then the meeting's not going ahead. I guess is kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Again, we're going from experience, and we do have the option, which we've made use of in the past, that if there was a minor, for example, this fence variance, the fence variance that we gave final approval to the night, that typically comes forward at a Committee of the Whole meeting. We do have the option, and we've done it in the past, where if there was no other business at a Committee of the Whole other than that variance, we wouldn't hold that Committee of the Whole meeting. We could move it to the next council meeting. And so we have that option in this August as well. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Garnett is opposed. The motion carries. And the second motion is that staff bring forward an amendment to the council procedure bylaw to remove committee of the whole meetings in July and August, and to set one council meeting in July and August for council's consideration. So this is staff to bring forward an amendment.
Second.
Sorry.
You're
Yeah,
making
no,
a-
go ahead.
Just seconding the motion.
No, I appreciate that. So just to note here that we're not giving approval to this. This is for staff to bring forward the amendment to council for its consideration. And as we know, amendments to the council procedure bylaw do require a public hearing, so that would be part of the process. So this is not giving approval to it. This is not saying we're going to go forward with a public hearing. This is asking staff to bring the particular amendment wording to a future meeting. For future years, this would begin in 2026 if it were to go forward. We haven't moved in second. I'll turn to the seconder.
Yeah, just as we follow through with this, if staff can give us some indication of the workload that has occurred in past committee of the whole meetings through the past summer months, just to give a sense of, we've had discussion around the table about that, but just if we could have some sort of census of what kind of business load or workload has been coming through and resulted in the cancellation of committee of whole meetings in the summer. Thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Duck. Not able to respond to that question at this moment in time, but we can include that in the staff report that comes forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor.
Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Mayor. I will support it, staff bringing it back. But I do want to just make the comment that I do have concerns based on the fact that it's 2026, and that's our last few months of our term. And in October of 2022, we had no meetings in the month of the election. So having meetings disappear in July and August and sort of throwing everything in September to try and get done before October is concerning to me. But that's just one comment I'll make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe?
Thanks. I'm in support of this. I think it's, things might come up, but I think what we're doing here, I see, is making a conscious effort to say, we're gonna let people have some downtime, staff and council, over the summer. So I think that's a good thing. And I think there's, flexibility to, if something urgent comes up, we don't necessarily have to have a committee of the whole. As the mayor says, we can have a council meeting or a special council meeting if it's that important. So, and based on what I've seen in past summers and even the last few months, we've had a couple of committee of the whole meetings canceled just because there wasn't enough. So I'm comfortable moving in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. We're next turning to council reports, and we'll turn under 11A to Councillor Garnett, our liaison to the Shaw Centre for the Salish Sea.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the latest board meeting on May 27th, and visitors to the centre from June 1st to May 25th of this year were just over 79,000. That's a 6.6% increase over last year, and of course that number will raise a little higher when the final numbers come in, because there was a week left in their calendar year to May 31st. Net income, 26,000, but at the end it was just over 6,000 with some minor small capital investments, and that was on a revenue of $1.14 million. And they did have a 116% increase in facility rentals, so they found another revenue stream, which is a good thing. They've done a preliminary budget for 25-26, and they're forecasting a 1.174 million revenues and a net income of just over $5,700. There will be some pretty large capital investments for visitor experience improvements, one of those being the wheelchair lift replacement, and that's expected to be done this fall. And as I've mentioned previously, they got a $102,000 grant, but the cost is, with the other things, will be a little higher, and they'll be taking $39,000 to cover the other costs from the capital reserve fund, and that'll leave that balance at just over $110,000. And of course, these are all projections again. And of course, the operating reserve will be at its maintained $200,000, which it has been in the past. The Wild Allies Pollinators and Native Plants has been extended to September 2026. And this is sort of similar along the lines of the museum, with them doing only one exhibit a year. It allows the staff to concentrate on things within the center and to be able to catch up on things they fall behind on, which happens because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into turnovers for these exhibits. And the garden by the center, which is just off of Beacon Park, is blooming. And if you go and just stand there for 15 minutes, you can actually watch pollinators, what the whole exhibit is about. And in cohesion with that, I attended their volunteer appreciation night, and they had Dr. Allison Moran do a presentation, and she's the coordinator of the Hummingbird Project, which is done through Rocky Point Bird Observatory in Victoria. It's a very fascinating presentation. There was a question and answer. And the one thing that I would just say is, because it was something I didn't know, and it ties and dovetails nicely to pollinating. The hummingbird is one of the most efficient pollinators that we have, and I did not know that. And they actually showed on a video what that meant is when they stick their head in, the pollen goes on the back of their head and on the throat, and they can't clean it. So it gets transferred almost in its entirety to the next plant, as opposed to other insects and whatnot that actually do a bit of cleaning and don't get it all there. So, we all love our hummingbirds, and now we know they have an even greater addition to our community. The Chinook salmon, the juveniles were to be released June 4th, and that was done in Souk, because this is where they came from. And a new cohort of 175 fry arrived at the center May 27th. They would go into an acclimatation tank, which I got to go see them, and there's a lot of them. And I'm not sure if they're in the main tank yet. They weren't as of that meeting. An update on, because I know you're all waiting to hear about Gertrude, the rock greenling. And she was the fish I told you about that had to have emergency spade surgery done by a local vet and our animal tech at the center. She had been in the rehabilitation tank for quite some time, and I'm happy to report she's been returned to her kelp forest habitat. And apparently her person, or fish in the tank that missed her badly, has not left her side since she's returned. So this is a happy story. And finally, on June 1st, the center hosted a World Oceans Day event at Beacon Park and engaged with over 1,000 visitors. And on that day, entry to the center is by donation. And they had 503 people visit, and they raised a total of $2,430 and a further $1,100 in retail sales. So all around a great start to their, because June 1st is their first year of the fiscal, so a good start for them. And that's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for all those positive updates. Any questions or comments from colleagues? Seeing none, we'll go on to the next agenda item. We're at committee reports. We have one this evening. We're receiving the minutes from the Sandwich Peninsula Accessibility Advisory Committee in their May 22nd meeting. We don't require a motion for that, but I will turn to our council representative on the committee, Councillor O'Keefe, to take us through the 3 recommendations, please.
Great, thank you, Mayor. First, in regards to the minutes, just one thing I wanted to highlight, item 6.1, which was the Newtway obstruction. And although it related to central Saanich, I just want to bring it up because one of the neat things I think about this particular committee is lessons learned from other municipalities. And so in this case, what happened in central Saanich is they got, someone wanted to make bike safety better for kids on this particular path. And so the idea they came up with was to put a bollard so that just before a busy street, so as the kids tootled down the path and they got towards West Saanich Road, there was a bollard there that would make them slow down. And so it was a good idea, but it had the unintended consequence of people with wheelchairs and other mobility devices no longer being able to access that path. So good idea, but unintended consequences. But to Central Saanich's credit, a couple community members brought it to their attention. They removed the bollard, I think, almost immediately. And so by the time it came to SPAC, it was actually had been removed, but they had come to SPAC to just say, we've done this, and can you give us some other ideas on how we can deal with that? So I just thought it was a good example of how things are being dealt with in other communities. Moving on to the, there's a few recommendations that came out. The first one is the BC HandyDART recommendation, which is that a joint letter with the councils of the District of North Saanich, the Town of Sydney, and the District of Central Saanich be sent to the Victoria Regional Transit Commission and BC Transit to ensure the recent changes to service levels for HandyDART booking systems guarantee the 2 weeks in advance to reserve a drop-off and pickup within a 30-minute window to permit persons with disabilities to allow access to not just appointments, but also other community participation and inclusion.
We have that move. Do we have a second there?
Second.
Second. Discussion.
I got a page of notes on this, but I think we had a couple of letters sent in from folks about that. We had a speaker today, so I'll just leave it at that unless there's questions that members of council have in regards to the motion or what's being requested.
Councillor Duck.
Just a couple of questions, and following up on the discussion and the presentation in public. Is there any consideration, two questions. One is is this going forward to the District of Central Saanich and District of North Saanich concurrently with this? Okay. And the second question is there any outreach been done to the other 10 municipalities to get similar letters coming from them to really reinforce this? Because this is not a peninsula problem, this is a CRD problem.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. So not yet. So what I was thinking is we'll try it here on the Saanich Peninsula, and if we get support from our 3 councils, I would propose, whether it's through SPAC, whether we contact the other committees in the accessibility committees in those areas, and let them know that we're doing this and encourage them to bring forward that recommendation to their councils as well.
Just to follow up, if I could suggest, I think you should start, based on the example we had tonight, I think making that outreach, expedite that outreach right now to get it going, because obviously this needs to be done sooner than later, and waiting for our 3 councils to do something before we get the other 10 on board would, I think, waste time.
I might have a suggestion, and that is other municipalities have done this. We've seen it under our correspondence for information. Is we could, I don't think we need to append the motion or amend the motion, but we could copy the other 10 councils in the regional district. I'm seeing nods from colleagues, so thank you for raising that, Councillor.
Sure. And to that end, should we make another motion to that effect after?
No,
or
Staff
Okay.
are indicating that they
sure.
can take care of that.
Okay.
Very good. Councillor Duncan, please.
Yeah, I had just seen that Czech News was CC'd on the original email, and it was over a month ago, so I was just wondering if she'd heard back, if she'd brought that forward to your meeting.
I don't believe she's heard from Czech. She did hear back from BC Transit, and she's meeting with them on Thursday, so we'll see. The Victoria Disability Resource Center also had a response from them, but basically their response is they acknowledge that something went wrong. They attribute it to their budget year ends on March 31st. And they said that they had a surplus from last year, which they carried into the current year. That expired on March 31st. And so they had to return to their regular funding levels. But they didn't tell the schedulers or anybody else that. And so as a result, they were overspending or whatever. But that still doesn't explain to me the reason for this disruption, because as we've heard from other people, they've been using HandyDART without issue for 7 or more years, and it's only this year that there's this disruption, so it's not really clear what's going on there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deck again.
Yeah, just further outreach, if maybe we could ask the mayor to reach out to our Transit Commission representative. I think it's Mayor Rinzer is the current representative, and bring that forward to the CRD Transit Commission.
Sorry, it's going to be sent to this letter is going to go to the
Okay.
VRTC. Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Please continue, Councillor.
All right, and the next one in regards to the changing place Changing Places International to ensure its inclusion in the World Toilet Map and other international directories for accessible facilities, and that the town of Sydney actively promote this facility and celebrate this milestone as a significant achievement in advancing community inclusion and accessibility.
Second.
We haven't moved in seconded. Any motivation?
I think it's self-explanatory, unless people have questions, I'm happy to address them.
Mr. Edwards?
No, I was just gonna ask that counselor to use her mic when speaking.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so I think it's self-explanatory, and actually in discussion with staff today at the official opening of the washroom, it sounds like staff are well on their way in moving this ahead anyways.
Councillor Duck?
Yeah, just following up on that, since we're gonna promote this as accessible, I think we better make sure it is accessible, and there was some challenges to that accessibility today with the doorway, the accessible part of being blocked, so I think we need to make sure that we reinforce the accessibility of it, and I don't know how we do that, but some way to make sure it is. If we're gonna mark it, we better make sure it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I can say that staff are on it. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. And the third recommendation.
And the final one, excuse me, that the District of Central Saanich, the District of North Saanich, and Town of Sydney register their public washrooms with the Go Here application, supported by Crohn's and Colitis Canada, and the Flush application.
Second for discussion.
We have a seconder.
All right.
Any motivation?
Yep, so this came up in the discussion of the changing places. And the rationale for this is, so people living with different sorts of medical conditions like Crohn's and colitis have need to access to washrooms up to 20 times a day. And the anxiety of going somewhere and not having access to a washroom often prevents them from going out and results in isolation. So these sort of apps allow individuals to be able to look online on the app before they go to wherever it is they're going to be visiting, to know where the washrooms are, and provide easy access for them. It's an app that the federal government is participating in. Also several big cities in Vancouver, New West, most of the cities or municipalities in the Greater Victoria area. I'm not aware if there's ones from Greater Victoria. I did go on the app today and I saw a few places. Municipality of Saanich Town Hall was on there, but I didn't see all of their different locations for public washrooms. So again, we might be kind of Sydney, kind of leading the way on this sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Duck as the seconder, then Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, just again, I think the town of Sydney can register, but we can't, within the motion, require that of the District of Central Saanich, District of North Saanich. So I'm not sure if the motion should be just to the town of Sydney do that, and that we recommend our sister neighboring communities do the same.
So I'm just going to pause here for a moment and turn to Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. This was actually just a question to Councillor O'Keefe about the benefit over an app like this versus something like Google Maps, which readily shows public bathrooms as well, and there's no additional staff effort required to update the Google Map versus the specific application that's being identified.
You know what? I don't think I know the answer to that question. However, having said that, it's a recommendation, and so, you know, if staff, you know, if we refer this to staff, and then if staff review the recommendation and have a better way to come out with the same results, you know, I'm sure SPAC would be fine with that.
Point of
Sorry.
order.
Sorry, I'm gonna come back to you, Councillor Duck.
Um, Sorry?
Sorry, you had the floor, Councillor Keith?
Yeah, no, that's,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, that's all.
So I think I'm seeing a nod from staff that, you know, this is a recommendation to staff and they would implement as they best see fit with, which may mean another alternative or supplementary alternative. I'm now gonna go back to Councillor Duck and a point he raised with regards to this motion. The recommendation that this council is making this evening to, that the District of Central Saanich and District of North Saanich register their public washrooms. I think it would be appropriate to remove District of Central Saanich and North Saanich from this motion and we're just acting on behalf of Town of Sydney. I'll look to the mover and seconder if they're amenable to that. I think it's a housekeeping change. Thank you for raising it, Councillor Duck. Further discussion on the motion, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'd had a similar question to Councillor Duck, whether this was an app, since the federal government was supporting it, I suppose it had to be officially registered by government. Otherwise, I was wondering if this was just an app, because there's probably dozens out there where, you know, individuals from the public can just register bathrooms they've been at. I know, you know, the LGBTQ community has, you know, bathrooms that are accessible, like, you know, all gender bathrooms and stuff. People can go and actually put those in there for other people in the community. So I'd kind of assumed that an accessibility thing like this would be similar. So I don't know if we actually need staff to do this, or if we can kind of get this to be done by a community member, or maybe even something like the SBIA, because we know we have such a big profile for accessibility, access, and washrooms. If this was the kind of thing that they can do as part of their.
I'm going to interject for just a moment and turn to Ms. Clary, please.
Thank you, everyone. So the Flush app does appear to be crowdsourced. So I did take a look at that, and it appears many of the town's public washrooms are already on it. And we've already sent a request to the Crohn's Colitis organization as well. It was very simple, and we're just waiting on our washrooms to be added to that app as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Keefe, for taking us through those. We're next turning to staff reports, and we have one item this evening under 13A. It's a new policy, FN-025, Council Remuneration Review. We have a report from Ms. Nelson and Mr. Hissick. I'll turn to Mr. Hissick, I believe, to introduce, or Ms. Nelson, please.
Thank you. This report is to address a priority identified in the strategic plan, which is to establish a council remuneration review policy. Staff utilized UBCM's Council and Board Remuneration Guide, which outlines best practices for local governments to consider in developing council remuneration. The staff report includes 4 key focus areas from the guide. Number 1, who should conduct the reviews. 2, the timing and frequency of reviews. 3 is setting the rates, and 4, considering annual adjustments. To note, the policy does not include reviews to specifically be undertaken during the 3rd year of a 4-year council term, in order to allow staff the option to obtain the most current rates from the comparators group. A draft policy has been prepared for council's consideration, and Mr. Hissick and I are happy to answer any questions. And I think Mr. Hissick has a nice graph for you guys that we'd like to bring up.
Mr. Hissick.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Mr. Chair, just a couple of things to add. You'll notice on page 5 of the report, we present an alternative. If council is not comfortable with finalizing a policy at this time, a recommendation might be to use this for the first review and then revisit the policy once the data comes back subsequently. And as Ms. Nelson mentioned, we were asked to provide some additional data today, and I took the opportunity to turn those into some graphical formats here. So just a bit more context, a bit more food for thought here. I'll share my screen. this first one is Sydney and the 7 proposed comparators, showing how we all align in terms of mayor's salary and councillor's salary from lowest to highest. Shows that North Saanich is currently the lowest within the comparator group, Sydney being second lowest, going all the way up to Esquimalt being the highest. And in the next chart, when we get there, so we have taken Sydney out, and these are the 7 comparators that we're proposing. And in addition to that, we have the average of the 7 as well as the median. So you'll see that Sydney's not on here, but among the comparators, the median is equivalent to the 4th out of 7, being Central Saanich in this case. And the average of the 7 is slightly about 5,000 less than the median. We also took a look at population among the comparator group, and it's important to note that population is just one tiny factor to be considered. It's not the be-all and end-all. So if you look at the populations of Sydney and North Saanich, for example, we're almost identical, but Sydney is a far more complex local government with more services on offer. So it wouldn't be necessarily appropriate to compare us to North Saanich in terms of like-for-like communities. But it does show that we are near the bottom in terms of population in the comparator group. So taking that a little bit further, if you look at the mayor's salary in terms of dollars per 1,000 in population, we are a little closer to the top than the bottom in this comparison, but again, it's only population we're looking at and not the other factors that should be considered. And finally, in terms of where the councillor salaries are in the region with respect to the mayor, there's a range from just over 37% at Oak Bay to over 50% in North Saanich. Sydney currently sits at 40, and the report recommends 50, but it'll be up to council's discretion as to where we land, and that decision could be made tonight or when the data comes back in the fall. A couple of words about financial implications. The cost for council remuneration, including payroll, taxes, and benefits, is approximately $174,000 this year, which is a tax equivalent of just over 1%. So anything we do at the policy will still leave council remuneration as a fairly tiny chunk of overall municipal expenditures. And just to point out that some external boards, such as the CRD, come with additional compensation through those other agencies, and those external appointments come with additional demands and workload. And while it's important to note, it's not part of today's discussion, as it's outside of our ability to control. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson and Mr. Hissick, for the introduction and slide information on the slides. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Through you to staff. So I notice on the current policy, number 5, it talks about mayor and council participating in extended benefit plan, and that's not in the current policy. Or is that, or unless I missed it, are we still expecting that members of council would have the option to participate in extended benefit plans, etc.?
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe, the intention was to maintain that, and if we do end up adopting this by bylaw as opposed to just policy, and that's the kind of detail that would be included. Okay. This policy is really intended only for the remuneration itself and the review of it.
Oh, okay, thanks. And just one other thing in terms of process, I think, staff's rationale about staff are in the best position to do the review and have a good understanding of the role of council. I'm wondering whether we considered an option, kind of like a hybrid approach, where staff have prepared a draft policy, do the survey of the salaries, and then present it to an independent committee of citizens for their review and comment and recommendations before coming back to council. Is that something that had been considered or might be feasible?
It was considered. We're just failing to see how that could really function, because when we did this last time about 12 years ago, there was such a committee, and none of them was experienced in the role of a councillor or really had any foundation to express kind of a learned opinion about what the job should pay. So I'm not seeing how that would add value, and that's why we didn't recommend it.
And I think it's important also, if you're going to establish a committee, that you have some kind of terms of reference. So what exactly are they looking at and going to report back to you on?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? So just before we go forward here, staff have made two recommendations. The first is to adopt the policy, and the second is to conduct a remuneration review. As Mr. Hissig indicated, Council does have the option of adopting the policy this evening, or waiting until the remuneration review is complete and brought forward and consider the policy at that time. I will leave it to Council's discretion on which they prefer to do. Councillor Duck?
I'd like to move the recommendation in full.
Both parts of the motion? Okay.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'd prefer to see it broken in two parts.
Okay. I then move that policy FN 025, council remuneration review, be adopted.
Second.
Okay, we have moved in second. I'll turn to the movers to begin.
I think it's great to see this come forward, and I thank staff for bringing forward the report. I agree with the recommendation, and I appreciate the structure being put in place, because I think that's the important part, that this will become part of the business of the town, rather than just occasionally brought up and kind of lost in the busyness of the work we have. So I think it's great to see this policy brought forward and support it going on. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate staff coming back, and I think the starting point for this is to look to policy and to outline policy. And I think one of the reasons I'm comfortable looking to adopt this policy this evening is it's then a starting point for the further process that staff are about to embark on. And again, recognizing that it's policy, there's the opportunity to amend and tweak it in the future as needed. But it's been some time since this has been addressed. We've identified it in our strategic plan as something that's important, so that there's some clarity out there in the community in terms of the process that we're going to take. And I appreciate the staff have used templates out there, including recommendations from UBCM in terms of how this process should unfold. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That motion carries. Councillor Duck?
And then 2, that the staff carry out the next council remuneration review and report the results to council no later than December 15th, 2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll turn to the movers.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you, Mayor. I really just wanted to see it broken out into segments, only because I think they're two distinctly different issues. The policy is going to guide this process, and we'll see this come back with the results of the review to council. And again, this has been made clear that the opportunity here is to see whatever amendments may come from that this process to be introduced in time to align with future council, not this council. So I think it gives us the opportunity to look at this, holistically and without personal bias. But I appreciate staff's acknowledgement that individual councillors who've been in this role recognize the the depth and commitment that goes into the role, and that this body, I think, should be well suited to take a look at this through the type of finding that staff bring back, and that's looking analytically at what other comparative municipalities are doing with their policies and with their rates of remuneration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. We have no items under 14 correspondence. We do have 7 items under correspondence for information that we're receiving on our agenda this evening. We have no notices of motion or motion to go on camera. I'd seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. All in favor? We are adjourned. Have a good evening.